It appears that America, however, has been on the back foot in the battle for cyberspace. Fired DHS Cybersecurity Chief Christopher Krebs admitted this weekend it was his failures which ultimately allowed the SolarWinds attack to go on undetected for many months. There's also a new report about a former advisor to SolarWinds who claims to have warned the company way back in 2017 about just how vulnerable they were to a cyber attack. According to Bloomberg, Ian Thornton Trump, no relation to President Trump, briefed SolarWinds executives on that threat. He left the company a month later, though, claiming that leadership was not interested in making any impactful changes. Joining me now to take all of this up, former senior State Department advisor, cybersecurity expert Morgan Wright. So, Morgan, what do you make of this latest information? Multiple adversaries, parallel attacks.
You know, Greg, this suspiciously sounds like the conversation you and I had about OPM, a while back. We've got the same set of threat actors inside of our systems going undetected for months, if not over a year. There's indications the initial intrusion into SolarWinds was in there for over a year. They did a dry run back in October. So, as this comes out, one of the biggest things we have to do is do damage assessment. How much has been impacted? How far did they actually get? What systems were actually touched? And right now, we're in a sense, Greg, we're flying blind. We have no idea the extent. And now the revelation of a second actor. Did they share information? Is this another Russian threat actor? Is this China? There's a lot of work to be done to really figure out and assign attribution. But at the end of the day, Greg, we have been caught not only with our pants down, we have been caught so far behind the lines right now. This is just, I can't even tell you. It's like the equivalent of a nuclear bomb going off. It's just devastating what this impact will have, not just now, but for years to come.
And what's the worst case scenario in terms of damage? I told our viewers a moment ago, we don't know the full extent of the damage done, not just to our government agencies, national security, but to corporations as well. What's your biggest fear on that?
Yeah, something I talked about before. This sounds suspiciously like what's called IPB, Intelligence Preparation of the Battlefield. When you get into the National Nuclear Security Agency, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, when you get into these places that have sensitive information about our critical infrastructure, from banking to finance to the energy grid to water, my concern is that this information is being stockpiled for use at a future time. Just the ongoing damage of information and data being stolen and the sensitive conversations happening at government levels. That's one thing. But the collection of vulnerability data, Greg, that's what really concerns me about what's going to be used with this. And again, this has all the characteristics of what the United States does before we go to war. Intelligence preparation of the battlefield. This is lurking out there. This is a huge issue that I think needs to be explored even further.
Well, so this malware has slipped into the SolarWinds server software, and they were warned about it from one of their own people, warning the executives that essentially, your security systems are like a hunk of Swiss cheese. There's so many holes in it. I mean, how can that be? Isn't that sort of the definition of recklessness and incompetence by SolarWinds?
Greg, this is the frustrating part. Having practiced in this area for a long time, I work right now as the chief security advisor for SentinelOne. We have seen this happen over and over again. Just substitute the name with a different company, and they have ignored the warnings. They've ignored the red flags. In this case for SolarWinds, they were looking at themselves even internally. Even this report from the person who quit, this Trump person, he's even looking at what if we get breached, what the real impact was. We've now broken into the locksmith store and gotten the keys to get into 18,000 homes without having to trip the alarms, without breaking glass. This is even worse than that. It's one thing for a company to get breached. It's another thing to use their technology to breach 18,000 or 500, whatever the damage of the extent may be. That's what's really happened here. And what's going to happen, I guarantee you, Greg, we're going to have congressional hearings. There will be some kind of legislation now that comes out of this that is going to put government regulation on top of how we handle things, very similar to Sarbanes-Oxley. Yeah. We'll have a digital version of something like that soon.
But speaking of government regulations, this guy, Christopher Krebs, who was recently fired as head of the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA, I mean, he said, look, I'm to blame. Well, he is to blame, but not just him, right? I mean, there are other people in our government who should have seen this coming a mile away.
Greg, this is something I wrote about before, and I've talked about what China's also done to collect all of this open source data, to collect data from intrusions. I mean, they've corrupted and and they've compromised a lot of our CIA assets that have gone into other countries. This was a massive intelligence failure. Why we did not have, we've relied too much from technical capabilities to say we've got great technology. Yeah, we do. But at the end of the day, you still need people listening in on conversations that are there in the room to say, guess what, guys? Russia is getting ready to launch this. Here's some information. Here's how they're going to do it. We have lost the ability to really have a comprehensive human asset program to get the human intelligence we need to discover and stop attacks like this. We simply cannot rely on bits and bytes. We've got to put humans in there at some point to really help defend and protect the national security of the United States. It can't all be done by computers.
Morgan Wright, great talking to you again. Thank you so much for the insight.
You bet,
Good
Greg.
to see you.